The focus died right under the bridge. One ugly cough, a red dash light, and then silence. I coasted half a car length before it stopped rolling, half in the shoulder, half in the road. I slapped the steering wheel hard enough to sting, then reached for my phone with fingers already stiff from the cold. The screen said 5:46 in the evening. I was supposed to pick up Mavis by 6. I called the after-school desk. "Mr. Grady," Mrs. Richardson answered, all clipped and cold. "You're late again. That means a $26 late pickup fee. This will go in your file." I bit my tongue. "Please just keep her inside. I'm on my way." She didn't answer that part, just said, "We close at 6:30. Do not be later than that." Quick note. Before listening, share in the comments how's your day going and where are you joining from, and let's continue. I hung up and sat there for half a second, chest tight, hands buzzing. I did the math in my head, rent due in 6 days, oil heat burning money, Mavis's boots a half size too small, and now a $26 penalty for being broke and unlucky. The phone buzzed again. Rory. "Cal, I need a run covered," he said. "Rush drop, rich folks up in Northview. They asked for you by name." "Me?" I frowned. "What for?" "Said you were respectful last time. They're paying extra if you do it yourself." I looked at the dying daylight and thought about walking across town for Mavis. "My car's dead." "Take the van. It's gassed and loaded. Just drop the cooler, then go grab your girl." I nodded before realizing he couldn't see me. "Okay, on it." I jogged back to the catering lot, grabbed the North Fork van, and shoved the cooler in the back. My legs ached and my hands were still numb. I hadn't had a real meal since lunch break at the cafeteria. Just coffee and a pack of crackers I found in my locker. Coldwater Bend looked like a snow globe shaken just enough. Porch lights on, salt tracks on driveways, smoke drifting out of chimneys. It didn't feel like a town for people like me anymore. It felt like something I watched from the outside. GPS took me up toward Northview Ridge, where the houses had porches with wreaths that matched their shutters. I parked out front of a place with a white fence, trimmed hedges, and a glowing porch light. Nice house. Real nice. I grabbed the cooler and rang the bell. A woman opened the door. Younger than me, maybe late 20s, dark green coat, clean makeup, clear eyes. She looked at me like she already knew me. "You're Cal?" she asked. I nodded, cautious. "Come in, you're expected." I hesitated. She didn't move, didn't blink, just held the door open like this was normal. I stepped in, eyes darting to the corners of the house. No shoes in the entry, clean wood floors, warm air, and somewhere back inside, a clock ticking. "Down the hall," she said. "We're waiting." "We?" The hallway opened up into a big living room with soft lighting and a long dining table set for maybe 8. At the far end sat an older woman, early 60s, neat silver hair, sitting straight like she was still in charge of something big. I didn't know her, but she looked at me like I was supposed to be there. I set the cooler on the table, but kept one hand on my keys. "Mr. Grady," she said. Her voice was warm, but there was weight behind it. "I've been looking forward to tonight." I froze for half a second. That name, the way she said it, like it meant something more. The younger woman stepped forward. "I'm Brenna. This is my mother, Lenora Quinn." I blinked. "Okay." She cut me off with a raised hand, like this was rehearsed. "Don't worry. We called the after-school desk, covered the late fee, and asked them to keep her with staff until you arrive." My mouth opened, but nothing came out. I didn't know what this was, but I stayed. I didn't sit, not right away. I stood behind the cooler for a beat, eyes shifting between the two of them. The older woman didn't flinch. She just reached into a folio by her elbow and slid something across the table like it was evidence in a trial, a plastic sleeve with an old receipt inside. I moved closer and sat down slow, hands resting flat on my knees like I was trying to ground myself. The paper was wrinkled, smudged from age. Printed near the top, Greenlee's Market, Ridge Avenue. The date hit me first, 13 years back. Then the list: chicken soup, tea, bread, $65 even. Below the total, in smudged blue pen, was something that kicked me right in the gut. Box 208, Johnson Hall. My old dorm mailbox. "You gave me this," she said, voice steady. "Not the paper, the money. You didn't even ask why. You just pushed it across the counter and said, 'Eat hot tonight, ma'am.' That's all you said." She looked right at me. No drama, no tears. I was ready to sign my company away that night. Walk away from everything. I hadn't eaten in 2 days, and I didn't want help. I wanted to vanish. But you... She tapped the sleeve gently. "You handed me warmth without asking for anything, and that broke the spiral." My throat tightened. I barely remembered it. I was 19 back then, sick half the winter, broke from missed shifts, living off instant noodles and pride. I'd worked 3 campus jobs just to cover books. One night, late, I'd walked into Greenlee's and saw a woman standing by the soup aisle, face hollow, eyes lost. That's it. That's all I remembered. "I don't know what to say," I murmured. "You don't need to say anything," she replied. I ate that night. Then I didn't sign. I called my attorney the next morning and fought, not to win, just to keep breathing. Brenna hadn't moved from the mantel. Her arms were crossed, but her eyes were locked on me, like she was waiting to see if I'd brag or squirm. I did neither. I just stared at the receipt, trying to line it up with everything I thought I knew about my life. I cleared my throat. "How'd you even find me?" "Rory mentioned your name on a dispatch a few months back," Lenora said. "I own part of North Fork Catering. I asked for a copy of your route schedule, casually. Then I kept paying attention. Not spying, just watching." My head started spinning. She listed things I didn't think anyone even saw. That I stayed after shift when the cafeteria was short because snow delayed the plows. That I swapped catering nights just to see Mavis's winter art show. That I taped our budget sheet to the fridge because it helped me think straight. It felt like someone had been reading over my shoulder for months. Then she changed gears. "I called your landlord, Mr. Treadwell," she said. "I've arranged for your rent to be covered for 12 months. That's $12,540, paid in full, starts this week." I blinked hard. "The Focus will be picked up tomorrow. It needs a new alternator, belts, and an inspection. I'll cover the shop bill, no strings. And I spoke to Rory. Your catering shifts will move to planned events only. Better pay, steadier hours." My hands gripped my knees so hard my knuckles turned white. "I can't take that," I said. It came out sharp, not because I was ungrateful, but because I didn't know how else to respond. "You say that when you're drowning, but still want to look like you're swimming." Lenora didn't even blink. "You're not taking anything. You gave me one night when I had nothing left. I'm buying you a year to breathe like a father again." The room went quiet. I looked down, then up, then finally met her eyes again. "Why me?" I asked. Her smile was sad and strong. "Because you had nothing and still handed me warmth. And because Coldwater Bend needs men like you upright, not grinding themselves into the floor." Brenna stepped closer, finally speaking. "It's not charity," she said, calm but direct. "It's alignment. If Mom helps you go steadier, you help us build something real. A community hub. No handouts, no gimmicks. Just help that works." I leaned back in the chair, still holding my keys like they might anchor me. My eyes dropped again to the receipt. $65. It wasn't even a big moment for me back then. Just one decent act I didn't think twice about. But it mattered to someone. I thought about Mavis. About the way she tries to fix everything with knock-knock jokes. The way she holds my hand when she thinks I'm sad. I thought about that rent notice taped above the sink, and the cold mornings I'd scraped frost off the Focus windshield with a library card because the scraper snapped in half last year. I exhaled, slow. "All right," I said. "Yes." Brenna's eyes narrowed like she was testing the word. "Yes," she repeated. "Yeah," I said again, louder this time. "I'll do it. I'll work. I'll help. I'll show up. Lenora gave a single nod, like she'd been waiting for that switch to flip. Brenna handed me a manila envelope. Basic overview, timeline, starter ideas. Look it over tonight. We meet again in 3 days. No suits, just us in person, sleeves rolled. The chair suddenly didn't feel so unsteady. My pulse was still racing, but something shifted. Not like winning the lottery, more like coming up for air after holding your breath too long. I tucked the envelope under my arm and stood. Lenora didn't reach out. She didn't need to. "I'll pick up my girl now," I said. "She'll want to hear a knock-knock joke." Brenna smiled faintly. "Tell her the punchline is already in motion." The snow was already crusting over the sidewalk when I got home that night, but I didn't feel the cold, not even when I missed the step and scraped my knuckles catching the doorframe. I had the envelope under my arm, the receipt in my jacket pocket, and something new in my chest I didn't recognize yet. Maybe oxygen. By Friday morning, Lenora had already made her move. Treadwell emailed me a file with a subject line that read like a summons. Confirmed ledger, Grady Cal, Unit 4B. I opened it and just sat there staring. 12 months paid, every single line stamped, paid through. December 31 next year, $12,540. Neat block, clean font, too real to argue with. At the bottom, a short note. Subject to future review. That part itched. I didn't know what it meant, but I didn't like it. The Focus came back from the shop 2 days later. Fresh belts, new alternator, inspection sticker tucked behind the wipers like a hall pass. Rory handed me the keys and said, "Drive it like you own it, not like it owns you." The repair sheet was $862 and change. Zeroed out. My name next to it. The guy at the counter gave me a look like I must have just come into money. I didn't explain. That weekend, Rory walked me through the new catering schedule. No more late calls, no more scrambled deliveries in sleet. He slid a paper across the counter, holiday office spreads, church banquets, 2 corporate events that needed warm trays and polite silence. Same hours, tighter windows, better tips, he said. Let's see what happens when you're not stretching yourself so thin. I nodded, still waiting for the catch. There wasn't one. Back home, Mavis was squatting in the middle of the living room with her sleeves rolled up and Play-Doh smashed into a dinner plate. "I'm your assistant now," she said without looking up, "until you find me a real mom. This position includes pancakes and backup plans, but I'm going to need you to hire better nap time." She grinned when she said it, like she knew exactly what it would do to me. I crouched next to her and helped shape one crooked blue pancake while trying not to tear up. She smelled like strawberry shampoo and crackers. At school pickup, I made it on time 4 days in a row. Mrs. Richardson still acted like I was applying for parole. She circled "pickup complete" on the sign-out sheet and underlined "policy reminder" every time like I couldn't read. On Thursday, she pulled me aside before I turned to leave. "Stability matters more than charm, Mr. Grady," she said. Her tone was clipped but not cruel. I didn't argue. "I know." She nodded once and went back to her desk. The next morning, Brenna was waiting at the catering warehouse, clipboard in hand, jaw set tight like always. She didn't say much, but I caught her checking her watch when I came in and muttering something about switching the Thursday prep block so I could make it to the elementary school early. That night was the winter sing-along. Mavis stood in the second row in reindeer pajamas and a paper hat with glitter all over her bangs. When she spotted me in the third pew, she broke formation and waved with both arms. I waved back and ignored the looks from the PTA row. Lenora called the whole thing the anchor room. Her voice went up just slightly when she said it, like she'd already walked through the place in her head. "We're not fixing poverty," she told me. "We're catching people before they fall off the edge. Resource triage, rental mediation, debt clinics, short-term bridge grants, and supervised play, so parents don't have to choose between getting help and watching their kids." I told her I could move tables, hand out coffee, make sure people signed in without hassle. "You're going to do more than pour coffee, Cal," she said. "People will look at you and see permission to show up messy." That stuck with me. What also stuck was the shaking. My hands still wouldn't sit still at night. I woke up 2, sometimes 3 times, heart pounding, like I'd forgotten something critical and couldn't remember what. I started keeping a notebook beside the bed. Nothing poetic, just lists. Things done, not owed. Lunch packed, Mavis boots bought, oil heat paid, science kit assembled, pickup on time, delivery done. Sometimes I wrote the same thing twice, just to see it again. The focus smelled like shop towels and old French fries, but it didn't stall when I turned the key, and that was enough. I cleaned out the back seat and vacuumed the floorboards. Mavis stuck a pine tree freshener on the dash and called it car perfume. The week after the sing-along, Brenna handed me a draft flyer for the anchor room. "Soft opening in February if we find the right space," she said. "We'll start with pop-up sessions, debt triage, housing consults, job coaching. No overhead yet, just sweat." I nodded, then paused. "Where do I fit in this?" "You already do." Simple as that. She didn't smile, but she didn't have to. I was starting to recognize her tells. Lenora came by the next afternoon with blueprints and a yellow notepad full of boxy sketches. One room for legal aid, one for job readiness, a mediation table near the front, and a kids' zone with soft floors and low light. Tuesday nights, Thursday mornings, Saturday clinics, she said. 3 sessions a week, start small, scale right. "You've done this before?" "No," she said, "but I've failed enough to know how not to." We sat there for 2 hours mapping out roles, resource partners, time slots, even coffee service rotation. When she mentioned bringing on someone to manage the flow of people at the front desk, she didn't ask me. She just looked up like I'd already agreed. That night, I stared at the sleeve with the $65 receipt tucked behind a magnet on the fridge. I didn't touch it. I didn't need to. I looked down at my notebook and wrote, "Started the hard part. Didn't quit." Mavis wandered out in pajamas, blanket around her shoulders. "Dad, do you think penguins get scared?" "Probably," I said, "but they still jump in cold water, right?" I looked at her, then at the list, and added one more line. Still jumping. The stew had been simmering a while when I got to the Quinn house. You could smell it from the porch, thick and steady, like someone expected you to sit down and stay. The place was quiet in a way my apartment never managed. No rattling pipes, no neighbor's TV bleeding through the wall. Everything had a spot, and everything stayed there. Lenora ladled the stew into bowls like it mattered. Brenna set bread on the table without a word. We sat, no rush. After a few minutes, Lenora folded her napkin once and looked at me straight. "I owe you the rest," she said, "not as a confession, as context." I didn't interrupt. I'd learned that when people like her start talking, you let them finish. 13 years ago, she said, my ex told Brenna I walked out. He said I chose work over her. What he didn't say was that he changed the locks on the office, froze accounts, and told our staff I was unstable. Brenna kept her eyes on her bowl. Her jaw tightened, but she didn't stop her mother. "I tried to explain," Lenora went on. "Letters, calls, attorneys. He blocked every door and waited me out. After a while, I started believing the version of me he sold, that I was the problem." She paused, then looked down at her hands. "That winter, I was going to sign a buyout with Reed and Hart. Predatory terms, strict control, clean exit." She reached behind her chair and pulled out a folder. Inside were clipped papers, thick and dense, the kind of contracts that bury you in polite language. She slid one page across the table. I didn't need to read it all. The clauses felt like handcuffs, even at a glance. "Your kindness broke the trance," she said. "That night at the grocery store, you didn't see a fallen executive. You saw a hungry person. That mattered more than anything else." Brenna finally spoke, voice level. "I don't excuse what happened. It took time for the lie to unravel. Years. And it didn't fix itself with speeches." She looked at me. "It fixed itself with proof. Calls answered, doors opened, showing up without announcements." I nodded. I understood that language. When it was my turn, the words came out rough but steady. "I got sick that spring," I said. "High fever. Hospitalized at Hudson Ridge for 12 nights. Bills came fast. Work didn't wait. I missed shifts and lost a job before I could stand straight. Neither of them interrupted. I fell behind. Then I fell quiet, I continued. That kind of panic doesn't scream. It just sits in your chest and tells you you're failing, even when you're upright. I told them about the notices taped above my sink, about how debt hunts you by mail and voicemail, about learning to smile through it for a kid who deserves better. Mavis asked me once if we could get a bigger heater, I said. She said our apartment breathed smoke in December. I laughed so she wouldn't see me break. Brenna looked away. Lenora didn't. When the bowls were empty, Lenora pushed them aside and pulled out a yellow pad. She wrote as she talked, fast and clean. Legal Clinic Tuesdays, she said. Plain language. No scare tactics. Landlord-tenant mediation Thursdays. Neutral table. No yelling. Job prep Saturday mornings. Resumes, interviews, clean clothes if needed. She drew a square in the corner. Playroom. Every session. Supervised. Safe. She slid the pad toward me. You're the face I need at the front table, she said. You know what fear looks like, and you don't look away. I started to protest. She cut me off with a look. This isn't about polish, she added. It's about trust. That same week, we borrowed folding tables and set them up in the catering warehouse on a slow afternoon. That's where I met Orson Cloud. 19. Skinny. Hoodie too thin for winter. He was hauling chairs like he didn't want to be noticed. I saw the stack of small claims letters peeking out of his backpack when he bent down. You want to talk about those? I asked. He shrugged, eyes on the floor. They keep coming. I don't even know where to start. We sat on the loading dock, breath fogging the air. I don't have money, he said after a bit. That's usually where people stop listening. I shook my head. You've got 2 hands and a shot. We start there. He looked up then, like someone finally said it in words he understood. We didn't promise miracles. We set steps. 1 week of program lodging through our partner church. Rory lined him up with pan-washing shifts that started early and ended clean. Tuesday morning with the credit counselor. 1 letter answered instead of ignored. Orson nodded through it all, slow but steady. I can do steps, he said. I just can't do speeches. Good, I told him. Neither can I. When we finished stacking the last chair, my back ached, and my hands were raw. Lenora watched from the office doorway. Brenna checked the sign-up sheet and made a note without looking up. I picked up the yellow pad, now full of boxes and arrows, and tucked it under my arm. Then I waved Orson toward the door, already talking about what came next. I still had sawdust on my pants when I changed shirts in the van. The good one, not great, but better than my work hoodie. Brenna handed me a lint roller without comment when I climbed the town hall steps. She wore gray and black, clean lines, sharp eyes. Lenora was already inside, talking low with someone in a plaid scarf and city boots, who looked more like a donor than a neighbor. The hearing was held in that same old paneled room where the town did every vote and complaint. Wood walls, dry air, chairs that creaked if you breathed wrong. The microphone on the front desk whined every third word. Half the folks who came kept their coats on. Salt stains crusted the floor by the door. We were here for one reason, to request a small-use variance for the old knitting shop on Harbor Street. 2 blocks off Main. The space was perfect except for zoning rules around childcare use. We needed the variance for the playroom. I took the 3rd seat in the front row. Not too eager, not too quiet. Treadwell was on the board. Gray tie, navy suit. That careful little smile he wore when he was pretending not to enjoy a moment too much. His eyes met mine once, then drifted off like I was background noise. When they called our item, I stood, walked to the mic, and tried to keep my knees from locking. I spoke plain. I didn't read from a paper. We're not asking for luxury, I said. We're asking for function. Folks in this town get sick, get hit with job loss, get squeezed by rent hikes or medical bills. And when they go looking for help, there's no place to sit, no place to talk, No place to bring your kid that doesn't make you feel like you're one bad hour from breaking. I paused. One of the board members adjusted his glasses, waiting. We want a space with a table, a counselor, a coffee pot, a room where your kid can build blocks while you build a plan. Treadwell leaned into his mic. Mr. Grady, are you the same tenant who paid rent late last March and again in August? The words didn't come hot, just cold and professional, like he was checking numbers on a spreadsheet. I let the silence stretch a little, just enough. Yes, sir, I said. Late, and then current. The heat didn't break, but I did, and it won't happen again. A couple people in the back row shifted. One nodded, one didn't. Then the developer came up, slick coat, polished tone, talked about traffic congestion and parking issues, said words like foot traffic density and public resource strain. He didn't say the word poor, but he said, handing out free cash like it was a crime. Before I could bite my tongue, Brenna stood. She didn't raise her voice, didn't even move fast, just stepped up to the mic with that same cold clarity she always carried when things got real. For the record, she said, this is not a giveaway program. Grants are audited. Outcomes are tracked. The anchor room serves working families, not imaginary crowds. She held up 2 sheets of paper, handed them to the board clerk, then turned back to face the room. And since transparency matters, she said, I'm disclosing that Mr. Treadwell's cousin shares legal counsel with Reed and Hart, the same firm that attempted a predatory acquisition of my mother's company over a decade ago. That may or may not be relevant, but it deserves daylight. That landed hard. The room murmured. A man in the corner coughed too loud and didn't recover right away. Treadwell shifted in his seat, jaw tight. The town attorney leaned over and whispered something in his ear. He didn't respond. I felt like a kid caught in a chess match he didn't start, but I didn't fold. I stepped back to the mic. I work the cafeteria at Coldwater Bend Elementary by day. I load vans at night. I'm not trying to play hero. I'm just tired of watching decent folks drown because they hit one bad month. The room stayed quiet. Then the clerk read a letter. I recognized the signature before he spoke the name. Mrs. D. Richardson. Stern handwriting, thick black ink. Kids settle faster when parents are steady. They need straight answers and safe chairs. This hub helps that happen. That was it. Short, firm, like she grades papers. The board mumbled among themselves. Then the chair tapped the gavel and said the vote would be delayed until December 10th. Pending further review of possible conflicts, he said. I exhaled through my nose and turned to leave. Brenna stepped down with me, her face unreadable. We pushed through the doors into the cold, crisp air. Salt on the steps, sky full of static. Treadwell followed us out, gloves already on, his tone smooth. Mr. Grady, he said, don't take it personal. These things go how they go. I turned to face him. My hands were still in my coat pockets. I've learned not to take anything personal, I said, but I take everything seriously. He didn't smile, just nodded like he had other things to do. I didn't watch him walk away. I didn't sleep the night after the hearing. Laid in bed staring at the ceiling, counting the slow creaks of radiator pipes, and waiting for my head to stop buzzing. It didn't. But I got up anyway. We didn't wait on permits. We just moved. First Monday morning after the hearing, we cleared out the catering warehouse during a dead shift, rolled the trays out, stacked the chafers in the back, and set up 5 folding tables, 4 clipboards, and 1 cheap urn of burnt coffee, donated by a local insurance agent who wanted 0 credit. Brenna called it a soft launch. Lenora called it proof of life. I didn't call it anything. I just showed up and got to work. A retired attorney named Ms. Keating came in with her own folding chair and did 8 consults the first Saturday. Real advice, not buzzwords. 2 parents left with action plans, debt timelines, follow-up numbers, and 1-letter template each. They shook my hand like I was the one who wrote it. The playroom wasn't much. Just 4 mats, a basket of blocks, and a space heater humming in the corner. But kids still laughed. You'd be surprised how fast a kid forgets the weight their parent came in carrying. Orson showed up that morning too. Clean hoodie, sleeves pushed up, hair damp like he actually bothered to shower. He hit his dish shift on time, then stayed late. We got him with a job coach that same afternoon. He pulled together a bare-bones resume that didn't lie but didn't apologize either. He told me later, "If you call the creditor first, the letter you get back sounds different." He said it like it was news. I nodded like it was a miracle. For some people it is. I kept using my notebook. Woke up at 2 in the morning most nights. That wasn't new. But now, instead of letting the panic drag me under, I reached for the notebook and reminded myself what I already handled. 3 families helped. Van fueled and clean, lunches packed. Oil heat paid through March. Winter boots ordered for Mavis. Each line felt like a sandbag against the flood, still shaky, but grounded. Brenna handled the city paperwork like it was a battlefield. Laser-focused, precise, no room for stalling. We sat through zoning prep calls, funding alignment huddles, and meetings with local groups who wanted to be partners, but also wanted their names on everything. She took the pressure off me without ever stepping in front. One realtor, slick guy in a long coat, tried to talk over me during a planning huddle. "Let's be real," he said, waving his pen. "Cal's great in the room with people, but—" Brenna didn't blink. "Cal's talking. You'll wait," she said, then turned right back to me like nothing happened. I didn't know where to look. I'd never had anyone run interference for me like that. When we got in the van later, I sat quiet for the first 10 minutes, just staring at the windshield. Then I muttered, "Thanks for that." She didn't look over. "Don't mention it," she said. At home, Mavis had started ending every joke with a new line. That one was free, but the next one costs a hug. I paid up every time. She knew what she was doing. Her timing was deadly. She made me a badge out of paper that read, "Chief of the Anchor Room," and taped it to my jacket before the first listening night. It peeled off halfway through the event, but I kept it in my pocket. That night, we packed the warehouse. People came in with grocery lists in one hand and questions in the other. We kept the lights bright and the air honest. No podium, just a mic and one speaker at a time. I ran the room with a clipboard, steady voice, and 0 promises I couldn't keep. Lenora stood in the back, arms folded, watching every second like she was building blueprints in her head. She didn't interrupt once. After we closed down and got the kids out of the play corner, I walked Brenna to her car. It was parked half a block down because the lot had filled fast. The night was cold and sharp, frost already climbing the windshield edges. She stopped next to the driver door, turned to me and said, "You're good at this." I raised an eyebrow. "I don't know what I'm doing." She didn't flinch. "That's not what I see." For a second, I didn't answer. Just stood there with my hands in my jacket pockets, trying to figure out how long it had been since anyone said something like that to me. Probably not, since Mavis started talking in full sentences. I gave her a nod and stepped back as she got in. "See you tomorrow," she said through the cracked window. "Yeah," I replied. "See you then." Back in my own apartment, Mavis was already asleep with her face buried under her blanket and her foot sticking out at an impossible angle. I bent to kiss her forehead and felt the edge of that old receipt in my pocket. Didn't need to pull it out. Just knowing it was there was enough. The envelope was beige, the kind with that little string you wind around a button. I found it on my doormat 2 weeks before the December 10th vote, tucked right where I'd trip over it leaving for work. My name was printed clean, no smudge, no error. Inside was Treadwell's version of generosity, renewal offer, typed in bold. Rent up 11%, and a brand new clause highlighted near the bottom. No overnight guests beyond immediate family, without prior written approval. I read it twice, then again. It stung in a way I couldn't explain out loud. I don't host overnights. Never did. I've got a 7-year-old and a neighbor who drops off pies on Tuesdays and sometimes sits with Mavis when I'm stuck at work. That's it. But the clause wasn't about behavior. It was about pressure, about tightening the screws until something snapped. I called him. It's legal, Treadwell said. His tone was smooth, like he'd rehearsed it. And timely. New year, new terms. I didn't answer right away. He filled the silence. You're not being singled out. This is market response. But I caught the timer in his voice, that quiet, waiting rhythm. I'd heard it before, from creditors, bosses, landlords. Make life small enough, and a man caves. That night, the old heat came back. Tight chest, cold palms, the invisible clamp on my lungs that made everything feel like it was one breath away from falling apart. I sat down hard on the kitchen floor, back against the cabinets, hands shaking in my lap. No noise, no tears, just that gray wave pulling me under. Mavis shuffled in barefoot with her blanket slung over one shoulder like a cape. She blinked at me once, then said, "This is an emergency giggle therapy moment." I didn't move. "Knock, knock," she said, already grinning. I answered on autopilot. "Who's there?" "Lettuce," she said. "Lettuce who?" "Let us in before Dad explodes." I laughed, not loud but real. We did 5 more, all bad, all hers. Somewhere between interrupting cow and ice cream if you don't, my hand stopped shaking. She fell asleep on my lap, blanket pulled up to her nose, breathing slow. I sat there for another hour, staring at the lease on the counter. Next morning I folded it and brought it to the Quinn house. Brenna opened the door, took one look at the paper in my hand, and raised an eyebrow. "He's baiting you," she said before I even spoke. Lenora was in the kitchen. I followed Brenna in, dropped the lease on the table. Lenora read it once, then again. Then she reached into a cabinet, pulled out an old folder, and laid it beside the lease. She flipped to page 12, then pointed. The clause was nearly word for word. Reed and Hart, draft agreement, December 12, year 2010. "Same tactic," Lenora said. "Control wrapped in paper." I rubbed the back of my neck. "What's the move?" "Small town," she said. "Long memory. You don't go toe-to-toe here. You leave on your terms." I nodded. "I give 30 days notice at the hearing if we win the vote. Lease is up January 11th anyway." "We'll back you," Brenna said. "We've got a building on Grove, modest 2-bedroom, managed by a woman named Clara Shore, used to teach 4th grade. No strings, just decent walls and steady heat." I nodded again. It felt like the right call. That night, after Mavis fell asleep, I sat with my notebook open and wrote a different kind of entry. Not a task list, a statement. Not angry, not soft. Just facts with a spine. Control dressed as policy is still control. Clauses that say who belongs are just fences in fancier font. I want Mavis to grow up seeing paper with truth on it, not traps. Next day on break at the warehouse, I was scribbling it out again, this time typed, cleaned up, sharper. Orson walked by carrying a tray of utensils. He slowed, peeked over my shoulder. "You look like you're auditioning for a better life," he said. I didn't look up. "Maybe I am," he grinned. "Well, your resume's looking solid." I gave him a nod and kept typing. That week, we helped 6 more families at the warehouse pop up. One man came in with a shoebox of unopened mail and left with a debt timeline and his first sleep in 3 weeks. One woman showed up silent and left with 3 housing leads and a supervised play slot for her daughter next Saturday. I watched each one walk out straighter than they walked in. That gave me more strength than any contract. Back at home, I taped a blank sheet next to the fridge. Mavis asked why. "Future stuff," I said. She handed me a purple marker. "Then use good color." The lobby was packed before the doors even opened. Coldwater Bend didn't do rallies, but this had been bubbling for weeks, and half the town wanted to see what kind of mess would land. The rumor mill had worked overtime. Some said we were starting a shelter. Others said it was a taxpayer sinkhole with daycare dressed as community service. Everyone had an opinion. Only a few had the facts. I walked in behind Brenna and didn't look around. Just focused on the front table, the same one I'd spoken from last time. My shirt collar sat straighter this round, no lint. I felt the weight of the folded notice in my coat pocket. 30 days ready to be delivered. When they called our hearing, I stood up first. I'm not going to rehash the need, I said straight into the mic. You've already heard it. So here's what I'll say. We've been running pop-ups out of the catering warehouse. Folding chairs, clipboards, one urn of burnt coffee, no funding, no titles, just people showing up. I pointed to the back corner, where a nurse from our volunteer list stood. Amanda Jarvis runs our play corner. She'll tell you what happens when parents finally breathe for 30 minutes. Amanda stepped up, holding her notes like a grocery list. I've watched kids go from clingy to calm in 20 minutes, she said. You let a parent sit down and speak to someone without dragging guilt in one hand and their toddler in the other? That's where things start to shift. You want fewer phone calls to school offices? Give parents a place to regroup? She handed over a folder and walked back to her seat without flair. That's what I liked about her. Then Brenna stepped forward, documents in hand. She moved calm, no raised voice, no shaking hands. She placed 2 pages on the clerk's table, Treadwell's lease clause, and a copy of Reed & Hart's decade-old predatory draft agreement. Page 12, highlighted. Before this vote, she said, I'd like to raise a concern for record. The wording in these 2 clauses is nearly identical. The firms involved, past and present, share legal counsel. She paused. If there's no issue, we'll proceed, but sunlight matters. A board member cleared his throat like he was choking on his own pride. The town attorney leaned in to whisper something behind the name placards. Treadwell didn't speak. He just reached for his water, then placed it down untouched. After a pause, he stood, face unreadable, and addressed the chair. I'll recuse myself from this vote. Effective immediately. He moved to the back row without another word. My heart thudded against my ribs, but I stayed even. I stepped back up, voice level. We're not handing out free money, I said. We're handing out next steps. We offer help with leases, job prep, debt advice. No one leaves with a check. They leave with a plan and a handshake. Someone near the window shifted, coat crinkling. I kept going. I'm not a nonprofit head. I'm a dad with 2 jobs and a busted focus that still gets me where I need to go. I show up because no one should drown in a town this small without somebody noticing. When I stepped back, there was no applause, just silence. Which was better? Then Mrs. Richardson stood up, gray coat zipped to the top, and handed the clerk a thin stack of papers. I'm not a partner in this project, she said, voice crisp, but I see what it does. She didn't read a speech, just pointed to the stack. Those are attendance slips. Kids whose parents use the pop-up hub. Those kids got picked up on time more. They settled faster. Some stopped acting out entirely. I'm here because facts matter. Then she sat back down. A few minutes later, the board returned from their huddle. The chair tapped the gavel. Vote count, 5-1, variance granted. That's all he said. No wrap-up, no commentary, just the vote. My knees felt like they could give out if I stopped moving, so I didn't. I nodded to Brenna and Amanda and walked straight out the front doors into the sharp air. No reporters. This town doesn't do that. But a few neighbors were waiting near the steps. 2 shook my hand like I'd done something brave. One said, "It's about time someone did something." I just nodded. I didn't feel brave. I felt wired. Brenna caught up with me, coat tight at the collar, breath visible in the cold. I'm going to Treadwell's office, I said. Want to walk or meet after? I'll wait here, she said. You know what to say. I found him behind his desk, tie loosened, blinds closed. Effective January 11th, I said, placing the letter on his desk. I'm not signing your renewal. He didn't look up at first. Then he gave me that same flat smile he always used when he wanted to make you doubt yourself. No hard feelings, Grady, he said. Market's tight. Be careful out there. I stepped back. I'll be fine, I said. Find someone else to bully with clauses. I turned and walked out. Brenna was still on the steps. She didn't clap or smile or give me a line. She just nodded once, which landed better than anything else would have. We signed the new lease 2 days later. Small place, paint a little scuffed, windows sealed tight, heat steady. Mavis walked in, looked around and said, "This apartment doesn't breathe smoke." I laughed. That's the idea. We opened the anchor room on December 18th without speeches or ribbon. Just a pair of blunt safety scissors that Mavis insisted on using, and a cardboard sign she'd painted with silver stars and glue that still smelled like kindergarten. The front door stuck a little, but it opened wide enough. People came in layered up, coats, scarves, tired eyes. Some looked wary, some looked relieved, like just walking into a room where someone knew their name was enough to knock the edge off. We wrote names on the sign-in sheet, poured coffee, and kept the clock honest. No one got rushed. No one got ignored. The legal clinic ran smooth. Ms. Keating typed letters that sounded like real people, not robots or threats. One woman teared up reading hers aloud and said, "That's the first letter I've gotten that didn't make my stomach drop." I just nodded and refilled her cup. The rental mediator, a guy named Clark with a bald spot and a therapist's calm, got 2 landlords to agree to winter payment plans that let families keep heat without skipping meals. No applause, just handshakes and relief. The job coach, same one who helped Orson, placed a dad from the paper mill into a better warehouse shift that started after his wife got home, so they didn't have to pay for childcare they couldn't afford. Orson became our first Work Steps fellow. His words, not ours. He ran the sign-in table like a pro, set up chairs before anyone asked, and figured out the coffee urns moods faster than I did. Some days it hissed like a threat. Some days it just blinked and worked. Orson named it Jolene. He also sat with the credit counselor again, called 2 creditors himself, and didn't flinch when one of them tried to shame him for missing 4 payments. "I'm not hiding," he said. "I'm fixing it." His voice didn't even shake. Brenna handled the donors. A few wanted their names on walls, plaques, banners. She told them, "The wall belongs to the kids' art. We'll hang 1 framed mission line and nothing else." Most of them still gave. The ones who didn't, we didn't chase. At one afternoon meeting, a vendor chuckled and said, "Cal's the face for charity now, huh?" I didn't say anything, just kept taking down folding chairs. Brenna didn't let it slide. "He's the reason this room works," she said, flat. The guy turned red. I kept stacking chairs. Mavis and Lenora bonded fast in the play corner. They did jigsaw puzzles while kids built towers out of foam blocks nearby. One afternoon, Lenora told Mavis that kindness was a muscle. You have to work it like anything else. Mavis responded, "I do push-ups of nice every day," and they both laughed so hard that half the room looked over. I didn't touch the Focus engine. It ran fine, but I did vacuum the seats, wipe down the dash, and install new wipers. Mavis picked out a pine tree air freshener and clipped it to the vent. "Now it smells like a forest that pays bills," she said. I didn't even try to respond to that one. Nights were still short. I still woke up at 2 in the morning more than I wanted to, but the panic didn't hit like it used to. When it did, I'd slip on a jacket, walk the block, and count porch lights, 10 steady ones on our street. That was enough to bring me back down. On Christmas Eve, we delivered trays to the firehouse and a nearby church that was running late-night meals. Rory raised a paper cup to me in the loading bay and said, "Spring comes, and you're moving into management. You ready?" I told him, "I like the floor." He shrugged. "That's why you'll be good." Back home, Mavis cut a star out of printer paper, colored it gold, and taped it to the front window. "We should save this for every year we didn't break," she said. I crouched down, looked her in the eye, and said, "We're not going to break. Not now." She smiled like she already believed it. That night, when I locked up the new apartment, I looked around and caught myself smiling at nothing in particular. Not at the couch, not at the window, not even at the fridge with 3 drawings stuck on crooked. Just smiling. It felt like oxygen. I'm 56 now, telling you this from a kitchen that doesn't hiss in the winter. The heat hums low and steady. Mavis, 31, still teases me about my pancakes, calls them edible circles of confusion. She volunteers at the anchor room some weekends, mostly when I forget how to rest, and she needs to remind me who's in charge. I still work with my hands, still load boxes, fix broken hinges, shovel the walkway without being asked. I don't do it because I have to. I do it because it keeps my head clear, and some habits are better left alone. The $65 receipt lives in the top drawer beside the stove. It's yellowed, edges soft. Sometimes I pull it out for guys who come in looking like they haven't slept. Men with shadows under their eyes and hands that can't stay still. They don't always talk. They don't need to. I show them the slip and say, "This paper meant nothing once. Now it means everything. So will yours." There isn't a word for that kind of weight. The kind made of overdue bills, quiet fear, and the feeling that one more setback might snap your spine. But I know that look. I wore it. Still do sometimes. Lenora's hair turned all white. Her spine still straight. She cooks too much stew and forgets how to portion anything under 4 quarts. She still calls the anchor room ours, but I know better. The truth is, that room built me, piece by piece, face to face, one shift at a time. Brenna and I didn't rush a thing. The first time she called just to ask how the school lunch line was, I felt 17 again. It wasn't romantic at first, just careful, intentional, like learning the rhythm of a new city street. Years later, I asked Mavis if it felt okay to bring Brenna into our life for real. She didn't even look up from her puzzle. "About time," she said. "You're slow, Dad." So we made room. As for payback, it didn't come with fanfare. The town opened an ethics file on Treadwell. Quiet meetings, some gentle pressure. He retired without a fuss. I didn't cheer, I didn't gloat. I just slept better knowing a man like that had fewer levers to pull. The better kind of payback came last January. I saw a kid on a bench outside the bus depot. Thin jacket, hood up, hands stuffed in the pockets like he was trying to disappear. He was staring at the ground like it might explain something. I sat beside him and said, "Cold day." He didn't respond at first, then nodded, said his name was Eli, 18, fresh out of the system. Mail already going to the wrong address. A few shut-off warnings, 1 court summons, and no clue what to do next. I didn't hand him cash. I handed him steps. A week at the partner lodge, a starter shift washing dishes through Rory's network, a Tuesday morning slot with the housing navigator and credit counselor, a careful call to a landlord who owed me one and agreed to review the application if I co-signed. Eli missed 1 shift early on. He called me anyway. We walked the block together until he could breathe again. Then he went back, finished the shift, and started the next step. And the next. He didn't need cheerleading. He just needed someone who didn't blink when he stumbled. At the Anchor Room Holiday Open House this past December, Eli stood by the door pouring coffee and greeting people. He said welcome without looking at his shoes. That's all I needed. People ask me sometimes when the turning point was. They expect something dramatic, a speech, a headline, a check in the mail. I tell them it was none of that. I tell them it was a cold night, a bowl of warm stew, and a crumpled paper that said $65. That paper reminded one woman not to quit. That moment gave me a year. That year gave me my life back. I should have known it sooner. Salvation doesn't come in fireworks. It comes in open doors, in names spoken without shame, and in learning how to say no to the people who write rules just to keep you small. If you're looking for a fancy ending, I don't have one. I've got a daughter who thinks my pancakes are passable, a Focus that still runs, a small room that keeps the wind off people when they need it most, and the steadiness to keep showing up. That's enough. Hey, real quick before you scroll, what's the one quiet decision you've made that ended up changing everything for you, even if no one noticed at the time? Please tap the hype button if this story hits something in you. It helps it reach more people who might need to hear it. And if you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe and like. Seriously, it's just 1 click, but means a lot on our end. Drop a comment too, even if it's just good story or your thoughts. I read everyone. Love you guys.